The film kicks off with an intense pursuit. Two lawbreakers, decked out as jesters, make a run for it towards Mexico. In the back seat, one of them is wounded, blood staining a bundle of money. Their getaway vehicle veers off the road, closing in on the border, while the driver races alongside the barrier, searching for any opening to cross over. They're hotly pursued by Mexican federal cops and the U.S. Border Patrol as they try to leap over the wall from a makeshift ramp. The car crashes and comes to a halt on Mexican territory, bringing the chase to a close. Officer Vasquez from the Mexican Federal Police and Bill from the United States Border Patrol reach a mutual understanding that the lawbreakers will be taken into American custody. However, when Vasquez spots a bag of money in the back seat, he strikes a shady deal with Bill, using it as leverage to persuade him to release the criminals. Consequently, the American Border Patrol departs without their fugitives. While two unidentified cowboys watch from a safe distance, Vasquez applies contemporary Mexican police techniques to the driver, but struggles to unearth his true identity. We'll call the driver Gringo, since he refuses to reveal who he really is. Vasquez and his partner Romero take the money and charge Gringo, who manages to provide them with fingerprints that are impossible to decipher. After processing, they transport him to a detention facility, a chaotic and turbulent place teeming with inmates who are armed and where rules seem non-existent. Not long after, a group of convicts assaults him, aiming to snatch his shoes and subjecting him to brutal abuse. Following this, the inmates receive a visit from the warden, who informs them that they'll soon be transferred to the main prison, El Pueblito. Shortly after, an American consulate officer named Jack arrives and inquires about the American prisoner. Gringo responds that they'll talk later and resolve matters. Despite having previous jail experiences, Gringo is taken aback when they transfer him to the general population area. Within Genpop, there are stores, food vendors, and tattoo parlors. While scanning the prison, Gringo spots the man who had attacked him earlier and decides to tail him. Gringo confronts the man, pushing him into a bathroom and rendering him unconscious after ensuring they are alone. Gringo seizes the man's firearm and personal belongings, discreetly hiding the gun inside a bathroom stall. He makes off with his money and a high-end wristwatch, then returns to the courtyard, where inmates are scattered on the grimy ground, and settles down for a nap. The following day, the detainees are transferred to the prison's recycling facility, with Gringo being closely guarded by several armed officers. A nurse draws his blood for an undisclosed experiment. Later, he spots a man in a bathrobe along with two of his associates in a penthouse. Gringo deduces that they likely hold a position of authority in this setting. In this small town, he comes to understand that money can buy a degree of autonomy. To kick things off, Gringo bribes the guards with a small sum and manages to secure a day off to leverage his skills. He navigates through the bustling crowd and identifies his first target, the cash stash hidden in a drug den. Gringo pilfers a can of cooking oil and ingeniously uses it to ignite a food cart, creating a diversion that captivates the onlookers, while leaving the money unattended. Seizing the opportunity, he snatches the money and escapes while everyone rushes to extinguish the fire. As he watches the cart burn, a 10-year-old approaches him and requests a cigarette. When Gringo declines, the child reveals that he witnessed the theft and threatens to report him if his demand isn't met. The boy resides in the prison with his mother and claims to possess special status. He also asserts that anyone with enough money can live within the prison alongside their family, which means non-inmates have the freedom to come and go as they please. As they continue getting acquainted, the child's mother catches him smoking and hurries him back home. Soon after, Jack pays Gringo a visit, offering to help him escape from the prison. Gringo, as usual, provides Jack with a fabricated identity and backstory while maintaining his innocence. Jack, however, questions the authenticity of Gringo's tale and suspects he's a seasoned criminal, highlighting how he obliterated his fingerprints. Their partnership is hindered by this lack of trust, so they part ways. Gringo sets out to plan his own escape, and Jack pledges to uncover the truth about him. Gringo rents a small living space from Carnal, the prison's real estate agent. Later that night, the prison king throws an extravagant party for the special inmates, replete with alluring partygoers. Gringo peers through a window and is surprised to see the warden among the attendees, but it's the Mexican child's mother who catches his attention. They almost share a moment before she approaches him and delivers a punch to his jaw. The following morning, an inmate is fatally shot in the courtyard for attempting a prison break, underscoring that escape is not a viable option. As the child approaches Gringo, they delve into a conversation about the child's mother working for Javi, the prison king. The child reveals that Caracas, Javi's brother, and Carnal, his cousin, serve as Javi's enforcers. Javi has a special arrangement with the authorities, allowing him to leave the prison at will, but he's still obligated to serve his sentence eventually. Gringo inquires about the child's earlier mention of being special and the blood sample taken from him, but the child remains unable to provide an explanation. Meanwhile, Jack is on the hunt for Officer Vasquez and his partner to gather more information about the case. He stumbles upon them in a brothel, surrounded by women, which raises his suspicions. On visiting day, the child finds himself in a brawl with another kid, cheered on by their peers. Javi and Caracas approach, and Javi orders Caracas to have the child's back. Gringo notices the boy discreetly producing a homemade weapon from his clothing and decides to shadow them, seemingly with the intention to eliminate Javi as they walk away. However, Gringo talks the child out of it, perplexed as to why the boy would want to kill Javi. After a heartfelt conversation, the child reveals that Javi murdered his father to steal his liver. Javi has an incredibly rare blood type, so uncommon that all inmates are tested for compatibility, and thus far, the kid and his father are the only matches. This is what makes the boy special. Javi takes care of him, keeping him close for the day when a new liver is needed. Jack's next destination is the impound yard, where Gringo's getaway car is located. There, he encounters the two cowboys from the movie's outset, searching through the vehicle in pursuit of their stolen money. Initially, they point a gun at him, but Jack manages to negotiate with them, revealing the money's location in exchange for a fair sum. Later, Javi hosts a wrestling match, which Gringo and the young boy attend. The child's mother also arrives and invites Gringo for a drink, but their conversation is interrupted by a prison officer who informs Gringo that he has a visitor. Officers Vasquez and Romero have arrived to interrogate Gringo about the source and ownership of the money. They attempt to intimidate him into revealing the truth, but Gringo reminds them that they are the ones in a perilous situation and must act swiftly. The following day, Gringo and the young boy devise a plan to lure Javi's henchmen, including Carnal and his friend Carlos. The child casually strolls by them, showcasing the previously stolen wristwatch. When Carlos notices it, he goes after the child into the alleyways. Gringo seizes the opportunity and deftly lifts Carnal's possessions. Later, the child's mother invites Gringo in for a beer. They take turns sharing stories about their former partners. Gringo reveals how he lost his wife to his business associate, Reginald Barnes, and how Barnes testified against Gringo in court, resulting in his imprisonment. She goes on to recount a recent dream where two men knock on Reginald's door and carry out a sinister act. In response, Gringo listens as she shares the story of her late husband and her child's extremely rare Bambi blood, a blood type occurring only once in 500 million people. Gringo promises to take care of her child. Meanwhile, Caracas pays a visit to Carnal to collect the state's wages, only to find him heavily intoxicated and incoherent. Carnal mentions that someone has taken the money, but his reputation as an addict overshadows his claims, leaving Caracas in a tough spot. He's left with a difficult choice: retrieve the missing money or risk losing his job. Caracas embarks on a drunken rampage with Carlos to track down the child. Carnal storms into their home and brutally assaults the child while the mother cries helplessly. When he fails to locate his money, he decides to harm the woman. Meanwhile, Gringo is relaxing in the courtyard when Carlos approaches him. Realizing that everything has gone awry, Gringo dashes toward the restroom, where he has hidden a firearm. He fumbles for his concealed weapon and fires at the man. Caracas arrives just in time and puts an end to Carnal's rampage. As the situation escalates, a fierce struggle unfolds, with Carnal gaining the upper hand, knocking Gringo to the ground, and preparing to finish him off. In a daring move, Gringo manages to rescue Caracas, the child, and his mother, but this act lands him in a holding cell. Javi storms in, armed and ready, but Gringo explains how he saved Javi, Caracas, and the invaluable child. Javi, upon realizing that Gringo is aware of the liver situation, decides to spare him and gain more insights. Later, Gringo receives a call from Jack, who offers to assist in recovering the money in exchange for a share of the proceeds. Instead, Gringo tracks down Caracas and reveals that Vasquez and Romero have stolen $2 million from him. He dupes Caracas into returning the money, requesting only a 10% cut, reasoning that having his money in Javi's hands is preferable to losing it all. Unfortunately for Caracas, the true owner of the money, Frank Fowler, has already acquired the contact information of the corrupt officers, thanks to Jack. The two cowboys from earlier have apprehended the officers, keeping them captive. Frank asserts that there were originally $4 million, but his men only located $1.7 million and 2 cars outside. Just as they're about to eliminate Vasquez, Javi's men show up, resulting in a violent confrontation where everyone is killed and the money is seized. On the other hand, Jack bribes the prison guards on Frank's behalf, ensuring protection for his men. Gringo, the child, and his mother find themselves ambushed in the prison yard by 3 cowboys. Gringo fights back vigorously, taking down 2 of the attackers and the guard above. The last cowboy hurls a grenade at Gringo, but he returns it in midair, causing a massive explosion. They somehow manage to survive the chaos that claims the lives of many others. Following this, Javi threatens to kill Gringo unless he reveals the truth about himself. Gringo identifies himself as Reginald Barnes this time. Acknowledging that Frank wouldn't part with his money willingly, Gringo offers to go and eliminate him in exchange for his freedom. Javi agrees, advising him to stay away from the child and his mother. After dealing with Frank, Javi grants Gringo a driver's license and dispatches 2 hired killers to eliminate him. However, Gringo manages to evade their pursuit, outsmarting them. Meanwhile, the prison warden informs Javi that the government intends to shut down the prison due to the previous violent incident. He confers with Caracas, and realizing his deteriorating health and the impending need for a liver transplant, decides to proceed with the surgery before it's too late. Gringo successfully bypasses border police using a fake ID and secures a job as an unassuming secretary. He contacts shipping magnate Thomas Kaufman, posing as Clint Eastwood, to arrange a meeting. Following this, Gringo tails Javi's hired assassins and discreetly sabotages their vehicle by placing a cheeseburger in the muffler. Gringo swiftly eliminates Javi's hired assassins when they pull over to inspect the cheeseburger in their muffler. Meanwhile, the child's mother watches in terror as Javi's doctor pays him a visit, indicating that the transplant is imminent. She rushes to her friend's house, hides the child in a concealed wall compartment, and instructs him to remain there until the danger has passed. Shortly thereafter, Javi's men arrive and forcibly restrain her in a dim, foreboding cell. They subject her to brutal mistreatment in an attempt to break her spirit. As she struggles to stay conscious, she catches a glimpse of her child standing a few feet away from Javi, holding a sharp weapon and stabbing himself in the liver multiple times, all in an effort to save his mother. They rush him to the nurse's station to preserve his liver, deciding to perform the surgery once his condition stabilizes later that night. Meanwhile, Gringo is diligently working on his scheme. He contacts Frank's representative, posing as Kaufman, and proposes the idea of conducting business with Frank to entice him out of hiding. After careful consideration, the representative deems the prospect of meeting a successful entrepreneur like Kaufman worthwhile and agrees to a meeting scheduled for the following morning at Kaufman's office. The next morning, Gringo arrives at the meeting carrying an umbrella and identifies himself as Reginald Barnes, his former disloyal business partner, while posing as Clint Eastwood's assistant. He swiftly incapacitates Mr. Kaufman, locking him in the bathroom after informing the secretary that Mr. Eastwood and 2 associates are en route. When Frank and his representative arrive at the office, the secretary mistakenly identifies them as associates and grants them entry. Gringo then cunningly distracts them with a wall painting before discreetly placing 2 explosives beneath their feet, ensuring their demise. He escapes as the sprinklers force him to employ his umbrella, while Kaufman's secretary finds him still alive. Before he can return the money, Gringo knows he needs to address one final matter with Jack. He locates Jack inebriated and carousing with strippers. Gringo binds him to a chair and commences his interrogation. It doesn't take much to get Jack talking. He swiftly confesses that Javi is undergoing surgery, and the prison will be closed that night, implying that Gringo won't see his money again if he doesn't act fast. After discovering the whereabouts of his wrecked car, Gringo seizes Jack's rifle and badge and hurries out of the room. Outside, a convoy of armed vehicles is assembled, with approximately 200 military and special operations personnel ready to converge on El Pueblito to dissolve the prison. As the military forces surge into the prison, chaos and riots erupt throughout the facility. While Javi is undergoing surgery, Caracas and his men defend the surgical room. Gringo enters using Jack's badge, embarking on a mission to locate Javi. With battles breaking out in every corner of the prison, Gringo faces an incredibly tough decision. Take the money and make a getaway, or stay to rescue the child. After much contemplation, he opts for the latter and rushes to the surgery room. Caracas attempts to thwart him, but Gringo slips inside just as they are about to extract the child's liver. He forces Caracas to bring the child's mother, threatening to kill Javi if his demands aren't met. One of the nurses, however, feigns capturing Gringo and draws a gun, giving Gringo the opportunity to eliminate Caracas and his guards. They hurriedly load the child into an ambulance, with Gringo also securing his money. Disguised as medics, they make their escape in the ambulance, leaving Javi to his fate. Gringo retrieves the remaining $2 million stored in his car at the impound yard. They escape to a picturesque beach where they relish a carefree existence. In due course, Kaufman tracks down and eliminates the real Reginald Barnes, fulfilling Gringo's desire and establishing his ideal life.